Hey everyone, Naomi Clement here. Have you been feeling kind of stuck in your work? Maybe you've hit a plateau and aren't sure where to take it next. Or maybe you keep wondering how to find your style or voice as a maker. I get it, and I've been there. That's why I created my Finding Your Voice mentorship program. It's a 5-month virtual program designed specifically for makers like you who are ready to explore new creative directions and dig deeper into their work. The group is kept small with just 8 to 10 participants, so you get real feedback, creative prompts, one-on-one sessions with me, and a community of makers who are on the same journey as you. This mentorship is all about the why behind your work. So if you're ready to push your work forward, I invite you to apply. Applications are easy and open now through December 4th. You can learn more and apply now at naomiclement.com/voice. That's naomiclement.com/voice. I'd love to help guide you on your creative journey.
What if you could grow your business and build a team without becoming a factory? Creating a business that values craft, flexibility, and the humans behind the work. Maybe you've thought about hiring help or finding a way to make more without burning out. But then the questions start flooding in. How do you even afford to pay someone? What if you can't find enough work to keep them busy and make the pay worth it? How do you train them? How long does it take to train them? Can't someone just come and help you in that totally overwhelming moment during the holidays and then that be it? And honestly, what if bringing on help changes the connection you have with the craft? I think a lot of us get stuck in this place where we're torn between wanting to grow and wanting to protect what we think makes our work special. We see other makers who've scaled up, some of whom we've actually heard from on this very podcast, like Jono Pandolfi and Alex Matisse of East Fork Pottery. And there's also been other people who have shared their story about changing their process in order to scale, like switching to slip casting. But are those the only paths forward? Maybe neither one of them sounds like what you really want to do. So we stay solo. And we hit a ceiling where we're working as much as humanly possible, but still can't quite make the numbers work. So what if there was a middle path? What if you could create a business structure that values flexibility and creativity and the actual humans doing the making, all while staying connected to that making process? Today's conversation with Sarah Wolf of Wolf Ceramics peels back some of those options. Sarah runs a ceramic studio in Hood River, Oregon, with a team of 8 people, which is significant, but it's not a factory. She's built something sustainable that supports multiple people's livelihoods while maintaining the craft and flexibility that drew her to pottery in the first place. We talk about those early years working from her parents' basement, what she describes as one of the greatest gifts her business ever received, and we'll get into the vulnerable, gradual process of hiring that first person, and then another, and then figuring out how to actually manage a team when that's not something any of us went to school for. And most of all, learning how to trust that team. Sarah gets refreshingly honest about the financial realities of growth, from the anxiety of signing her first commercial lease to the creative financing it took to buy a house during 2021. And she shares something I think we all need to hear, that setting clear boundaries and expectations actually creates more freedom, not less. Whether you're years away from even considering a first hire, or if you're already managing a small team and wondering if you're even doing it right, or if you're just curious about what different sustainable growth options might look like in a handmade business, this conversation has a lot to offer. So much so that this is actually only part 1. So make sure you're subscribed to the show on whatever podcast listening app you are using. Sometimes it's a plus sign, sometimes it says follow. Who knows what else it says on how many other app options there are. Just make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on part 2. Let's dig into Sarah's journey of building a business that supports multiple makers while staying true to the craft, right after this brief word from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by The Community, your creative business support system with over 100 makers from around the world. With both the practical education you need to make a living from the things you make, found in our masterclasses on topics like finances, marketing, and SEO, plus the emotional support of fellow makers who truly understand what it's like to try and make a living from the things we make. It's like having both a business school designed specifically for artists and a team of colleagues who actually get what you're going through. But you don't have to take my word for it.
Hi, I'm Anna, based in Galway, Ireland. I'm a full-time ceramicist since January this year. I was actually one of the first to join the community, and from the beginning I saw this as a beautiful space for makers growing and evolving. It has been a huge support and network for myself, and everyone is so wonderful and supportive. And even though we are all in different parts of the world, we have this special and wonderful connection I really love. You can find me on Instagram or TikTok simply by Ceramics by Anna, or in English Ceramics by Anne, and also through my own webpage, Ceramics by Anne.
Now, on with the show. Welcome to the Maker's Playbook, the show where we talk all about what it's really like to make a living from the things you make. I'm your host, seasoned entrepreneur of 14 years, Rebecca Ikes Kara. Hey, Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, nice to meet you.
I have no good segue of like we were having a normal conversation and then I go like, hello.
Here we are.
Well, let's get right into it and I will just have you introduce yourself for the people who don't know who I'm talking to.
All right, my name's Sarah Wolf. I am a potter / ceramic artist, etc. I have a production business in Oregon, in Hood River, which is a little town about an hour from Portland. Yeah, we'll get into the rest, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, what I'm excited to talk to you about, especially, and we mentioned this before we hit record, is you have this, what appears to me as an outsider looking in, this magical balance of having a team, having a support, but not having a factory. Right? You're like walking this line between you're not a solo maker, you have more people you're responsible to in terms of bringing in the work and supporting people and all of the fun parts of 1099s and W-2s and whatever. Exactly why we got into this, right? But not like 30, 80, 100, 200 people. Like, you know, I've talked to Jono, I've talked to Alex Matisse over at East Fork, and those are totally different business models. But it's really hard, from my perspective, it's hard to keep that balance because you're bigger than you were, but you don't have as much resources to support. I don't know.
Totally. Yeah, I do think it's a really delicate line. And I'm like, wait, are we on the line or are we crossing into that in-between zone where it's harder and you make less money before you get really big? But I think we're doing all right. And I don't want to be a factory. And it's like, I definitely have to check myself routinely to be like, where do we want to be? Because it's a choice. And this actually came up recently talking with someone on my team. The business could probably offer much better benefits and pay over time if we were more of a factory. But instead, it offers flexibility, a diverse set of tasks that everybody gets to do, a really nice work environment. And it's not able to offer as many of those things. And like, ultimately, I'm choosing where that balance is because I think that that's what people want. But I'm like, interesting. That's probably different for everyone.
Well, and it's important to think about like the humanity of either side, right? It's like, okay, no one will be surprised that the words healthcare are coming out of my mouth early in the conversation. You need that, but at a certain point, like if you have a livable wage, do you need another 20 grand like a year? It would be great. Don't get me wrong. But like, am I willing to sacrifice being able to, I don't know what all the flexibility you guys have is, but like, adjust my hours as needed because the weather is perfect today and we're going to go for a hike and make up for it on a Saturday that you wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah, I can give you a little background of where we're at now. It's changed so much over the years. The first 5 years of the business, we were in a basement, in my parents' basement. The greatest gift this business has had was 5 years in my parents' basement, not paying rent.
Yeah.
Huge gift.
That's huge.
Huge leg up. But, my MO is to be very loose and be like, yeah, like you can totally design your own hours, come when you want. If you want to work late, that's great. And then over those early years, I would like descend into like burnout, anxiety, like melt of like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to get done and when. And we talked about this, but is it happening? And we need boundaries. So, yeah, too many rounds of that making me feel like I can't do this anymore. I will melt and die, to the point where now we have a better structure where we have core hours. Everybody's like present at the studio between 9 and 4, Monday through Thursday. And then they fit in the rest of their hours around that. And I ask everybody, there's 8 of us, including me. Everybody's full time, which we define as 32 to 40 hours. So some people work 4-day weeks, like half the team probably, but occasionally they'll jump in on a Friday to load kilns or whatever. And some people prefer to work Fridays, and it's usually like a half day, but it's very casual on Fridays. It's impossible to go back from that once you start doing it. That's one of the nice flexibilities that I think we all enjoy.
I want to kind of walk through how you got there because you mentioned those early days. But just to put a pin in this subject, I think the interesting thing for anybody who's thinking about growing a team, and I did it before, and then I kind of realized it wasn't for the event photography side of things for me, it wasn't actually giving me the freedom that I was looking to have. So it was like a live and learn thing. There's a lot of mental pressure on like, you provide 7 people's full-time salary. Like that is their livelihood.
Yeah,
That's
pressure right there.
It's amazing and super powerful, and I found myself being able to better charge what we were worth when I was protecting someone else's time and money personally.
Yeah, totally.
But it's also like, that's a lot to be responsible for 7 different people's livelihood. You know, you could have done this in a different way where everybody's part-time and you assume they have other jobs, and so then you don't have to stress out as much. So like, that's a big deal.
It's a trade-off because if everybody's part-time and they have other jobs and they're not like really fully in, then it's hard to rely on them. And I will say I've like from the very beginning, the idea of being responsible for other people's salaries or wages or whatever has been terrifying and it's like you're so vulnerable. It's a lot of weight and it's just been so gradual. I had 1099 folks like 2 days a week, 3 days a week, a few people. It was like year after year, it was like, okay, I feel confident. We have the demand. We have these projects going on. I need more help. It was so gradual. And here I am now with 7 full-time employees. And I'm like, oh my God, payroll is crazy. Like, it's like a frog in a slowly heating pot of water.
Are you jumping out or is this a cry for help?
It's
or what?
okay. It's okay. But I think sometimes people, myself included, would think of like having a team and be like, I could never handle or like bring in enough revenue or be in charge of paying that many people. But if you do it step by step by step, one tiny little step at a time, I guess I'm saying like, it's okay. Here we are. It's been 9 years of getting here and I'm able to add little things each year, like a little bit more to the benefits we can offer or to pay. And it's not as much as I would like, but it's just so gradual.
I think the important part there that we kind of glossed over is it has been 9 years to this point. And I think a lot of us, when you're getting started and you're looking at people going, oh my gosh, wow. You know, like I was talking to Danny Meisinger recently just over DMs or whatever. And he was like, yeah, everybody's looking at me now like, this is the life I want to have. And he's like, but do you want the first 30 years where I barely made any money?
Totally.
The grind of getting to that point. Yeah, right now it looks amazing.
Yeah, and it's been a decade if you count some other stuff. And it was a grind. It certainly is still. It's just a different kind of grind. But oh my God, I was so lucky in terms of like the position I was in when I started. I didn't have a massive amount of college debt. I lived in Portland in an unfinished basement for $450 a month. I had no children, no mortgage. I know everybody's life trajectory leads them different places at different times. And I feel really lucky to have like landed making pots where I did, when I did, because I was 25 and it gave me those years of my late 20s to get a little bit established and be able to be a little more established since then. And I'm like, I'm married. I have a child. I have another child coming. So I'm always like, this is crazy, but I think we can pull it off. I'm going to take 3 months maternity leave and my team is awesome and they can handle it. I know it.
Well, and then that's the amazing side. We were talking about the stressors of having people on the team, but that's the amazing part is that when the gears and the systems and everything works, whether that be supporting somebody else on the team or for yourself, Wolf Ceramics doesn't like just put up we'll be back in 3 months. Thank you so much. Like, no, you keep going and you can be human as well.
You know what? The thing is, it's really nice to remember we could do that. It's funny. There are certainly customers who are like, why hasn't this shipped? I ordered it 2 days ago. And I'm like, we are at the wheel. We ship on Tuesdays. We are people. I think it's good to remember that people are really forgiving when you like show a little humanity. Like, hey, we're away for the holidays for 2 weeks. We're not shipping anything till January 10th. Sorry. Have fun out there. Bye. Just like be upfront with people, set expectations. If they're unhappy, refund them. If we had to close down for 3 months, I actually think we could. And I like to tell myself that it might even like feed our, I hate to use the word brand, but it would remind our customer base that we're humans, which sometimes because we've been around a long time and the team is, bigger than a single solo potter, like people think like, oh, you're this big business. And it's like, okay, well, it's all relative, but we're still pretty small over here.
This is interesting what you just mentioned about like once you start growing people and then people start seeing you as like a company instead of humans. Because we were just talking about this in my membership community about the difference of using like our on a website instead of me or I, like using this kind of universal plural statement instead of singular. And for solo potters also, like for people that don't have teams, it's like, well, does this make me sound more professional? And a lot of people have opted to go back to just using I, me, myself as that reminder of like, it's just me.
Yeah. I'm not always consistent about that. I think we and us is like more common at this point and like the emails that we send out and social media, whatever. But there are definitely moments where I'm writing something. I'm like, this is me this time. Sorry if that's catching you off guard or confusing. I can't always be consistent.
But also I feel like that type of stuff is what keeps the humanity, right? Like it's interesting to think about. I think of a lot of solo potters like with the goal of having a brand the way you were talking about, like Wolf Ceramics, it's a known thing. Like having that is like so many people's goal to have that professional feeling. And maybe I'm putting my own stuff on this and it's just my own, I don't know, imposter syndrome that like the more professional you appear, then that just gives us, the makers, the confidence. But it's interesting to think about then what happens when you do that. You have to remind people that there's humans and that you're not Amazon and that you don't ship in 24 hours. Like all of these other things that it's funny. We think doing one thing will solve a problem, but it also brings up a different set of problems.
I could apply that sentence to many things clay related too.
Well, I feel like I jumped in straight at the like, I don't know, current day view. So let's back up a little bit because you mentioned being able to land in your parents' basement to get started, because I was going to ask why Oregon, but that kind of answers that question.
Yeah, I can give you a little how it came to be. I'll try to just blast through the early stuff. But yeah, I grew up in Portland. My mom's a painter professionally. And so her studio was the attic of our house, which was really awesome. It was a place where I was allowed to draw on the floor and make a mess. And my dad was a physicist. So a really wild pair. But I was always like into the sciences and the arts. And I got into ceramics in high school. I went to this really awesome school, a private school that my parents could only afford because I was an only child. In retrospect, I'm like, yeah, I wished I had siblings, but would I have been able to be making pottery in the basement of a, like, it was pretty cool. There were like looms and a forest.
What?
I can't believe my luck.
Wild.
I will not be able to send my kid to a school like that. But that was so great. I fell in love with ceramics and a lot of crafts. And I fell in love with climbing. Those were like my loves. And then I went away to college in Washington, just a little north of here, and was really torn on what to study. Should it be art? Should it be something in the sciences? I really liked chemistry. And I was like, well, no one was saying this directly to me, but like, if there's a choice, like obviously science is better. Like I'll make a living or something.
If you had said arts, like, what are you going to do with that? Like,
literally, my mother has made her living off of art her entire life. And I still was like, I can't make a living off of art.
Right. Then I have to marry a physicist.
Yeah. But truly, like, full disclosure, like, I witnessed them over my young life. I think he probably made more money than her overall, but they would trade off making the money. They both followed their passion projects. He was a consultant. He would work on consulting projects that paid great, and he would work for really exciting startups that couldn't pay him or wouldn't be able to when they thought, like, And she would be like, that's fine. Like, my art is selling great right now. That's sort of a
I love
generalization,
that.
but they supported each other to follow the
Mm.
things they were interested in. And again, in retrospect, I didn't realize this at the time, but I was like, that's so cool.
Follow-up interview with wolf parents? Like, what?
So anyway, I ended up studying geochemistry. Geology was, I would say, was like where all the climbers landed, which that's how I found geology. And I hadn't thought that would be my thing, but it was. And I got to spend tons of time in the field in the mountains, and that was amazing. But I minored in art, spent a lot of time in the ceramic studio. And, by the end of college and in the years after, I was pretty sure that I didn't actually want to be a lab scientist. I had had some jobs in that world briefly, and I was like, oh, no, 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 no. I need to be moving more.
I'm thinking like the person who likes to be on a side of a mountain being in a sterile lab is
Yeah,
a slightly
yeah.
different environment.
It's different. And not that there aren't geologists out doing field work. I had some like really bad back problems in college too that kind of prevented me from doing a lot more field work. Had that not been, maybe I would have done something different. But anyway, I feel grateful too to like, I would say my father primarily for being like, college is where you go to learn how to learn. Study something you're really interested in, get really good at it. And sure, it's great if you use it, but mainly you're just like developing your brain. I'm very grateful for that mentality. So yeah, I bounced around, I traveled, I farmed, I lived on a commune, what else did I do? Anyway, many things. I thought I was going to go to architecture school actually, because I was like creative.
Me too. I can be creative, but I'm also really good at math and I'll get healthcare.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
It's a real job.
I've now had friends who did take that path and like, I still wouldn't be making anything I thought I would be making if I had
It's
spent
hard.
20 years in architect. You're just like a studio gremlin for the first like decade of your life.
That's what it seems like, though I'm sure people make it what they want and some, succeed at that. Same way they do in ceramics, I suppose. But I started working for a design build company when I was 24. I was just doing grunt labor on a construction crew, but it was at this cool company. And I was like starting to apply to architecture programs. And I had this sort of mounting sense of doom in a way. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go into debt to school for 3 years. I'm going to give up climbing and mountains and gardening and pottery. Also, I can do 100%, like 70 hours a week of architecture. And then I'll work for 5-10 years doing the most boring stuff just to get licensed. I was like, oh my God, in front of a computer. I just like melted. And at the same time, it was the fall of whatever year that was, 2015, 14. I broke up with someone. The house I was renting, I was in the basement at that time too. It flooded and I had to move out. I had to move in with my parents like the next day because it was flooded and they had to rip the floors out. And then my car broke down like 3 times in 1 month and it costs more than my entire month's wage. I was like having this kind of like, how does anybody survive in this world and afford to even have a shitty old car?
Right. Like these were not nice that you weren't like living the high life and living so large that then one little thing sets you off.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm getting by. I'm being super frugal. Why isn't this working?
Yeah,
I feel this.
this
I
is
feel this
hard.
so deep in my soul.
And simultaneously, I was like, and I feel like, am I spoiled to be like, I don't want to go to architecture for school for 3 years and give up all my hobbies, like poor me.
Right.
I had moved in with my parents. I had to move out of that rental and I didn't have rent for the fall. So I was like, all right, I'm quitting my job. I'm not applying to architecture school. I'm going to join a little community ceramic studio and go on some road trips. And I spent like 3 or 4 months kind of doing that, mostly making pots. And I decided to apply to a craft school in Portland called the Oregon College of Art and Craft, which has very tragically gone under since then. It was an incredible old craft school. I got in, which isn't particularly surprising. It wasn't that hard to get into. I got into their post-baccalaureate certificate program, which, to be honest, that took me 1.5 years. The master's was 2 years. It would have been a few more months and not really much more expensive. But at that point, I was like, I don't think I care about a master's. I just want technical skills.
Yeah.
And the master's program was a lot more reading and writing about art rather than making.
Capital A art, as I say, rather than, which is so silly. But that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, that's oh man, another day.
Yeah, it's too early.
Don't get me art versus craft. Like, honestly, I don't even want to go there. I don't care. Both.
It's such a silly, pointless, useless. Yep. Okay, cool. Anyways.
Onwards. So yeah, that was like That was amazing. And at this point, I had worked on and off in outdoor education, leading mountaineering and rock climbing trips and teaching. So, working with mostly high schoolers, some college students. I did that all the way through college and intermittently afterwards. So, that was the job that I fell into while I was in school. And I ended up working for the school that I went to as a kid, as well as a few other schools in Portland. And the year and a half that I was in ceramic school, I ran an after school climbing program, which was great. It wasn't while I was in class. I did weekend trips. I did spring break and summer trips. And so that was how I made my enough money to live off of, just barely. In addition to that, I spent like 40 hours a week in the studio. Got to take all studio classes for 3 semesters and just be around the most amazing people who are like open-minded and weird and people of all kinds. That was what was so great about that school. It was like really a diverse set of ages of people. It was just like a very open-minded environment to both art and very traditional craft, both ends of the spectrum. And I got to make so much stuff and find my style. And I feel really grateful for that. Each person has their own path to finding what their style is, and it might not be super consistent, and that's that. But while I was there, I did kind of like naturally come to a place where I was like, oh my God, I am obsessed with black and white and like raw earthy clay. And there's something about the limitations of those 3 materials, or like those 2 colors and the clay, that in a way like blows up the possibilities for me. Because I had been like doing, over the years, atmospheric firings. I was like, maybe I'll be a kiln builder. Maybe there's so many different things I had tried. And then I honed in on this little niche and I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm grateful that I got to that place, because it meant that once I started making work kind of towards the end of that program and afterwards, I had like a style that became recognizable.
I think it's really interesting to hear that trajectory, because what I hear in that is like giving yourself the year and a half to just practically immerse yourself. Obviously, you had the other work, you had to still pay bills and whatnot, but you could have like leaped straight from undergrad into, I'm going to start trying to sell pots. Even on the side, even whatever. This is mostly my brain, but I think it happens to a lot of us. I don't think it's just me. Once we leap into that, yes, you're thinking about what you want to make and what you like, but you're also thinking about what you can sell. And so to have that intentional time, and obviously perfect world for people to be able to have it in a group setting and feedback and critique and somebody with professional skills and craftsmanship, that's all ideal. But I think even for somebody not able to like take time away from life at this point to do that, to give a set period of time to say, okay, for the next 6 months, for whatever it is, I'm just going to explore. I'm going to keep the job I have a little bit longer, or I'm going to go get a different part-time job so that I can have some consistent income, so that I can just find what it is that's lighting me up. Because that's been the thing. Literally every person has said that I've interviewed for like 4 years, 5 years at this point, has been like, make what you love. And it's like, okay, that's great, but how do we pay the bills?
Yeah, no, I'm a firm believer in what you just described. Like, yeah, you have to make things that people are going to want to buy at some point. But I do really believe in also fitting in projects that are just really exciting. Even now, like some amount of what I do, and this ebbs and flows given energy, time, and space, but like to do something that people might not want. You don't know what you're going to learn from it, or what's going to come out of it, or what new idea is going to come from it. And, the same goes for that time in school was like just an investment in myself. Quite literally, I was paying for it, for school. But other projects I've done over the years that have failed, this is probably just the optimist in me. But when I see that coming, or when that has happened, I've like spent a lot of time and money even maybe doing something that was a flop. I'm like, I will consider that as school. It's like, that was like paying for a class. Just wasn't a real class, but it was a project and I learned something, and maybe I learned what I don't want to do or how not to do something, but there we go. I learned it. Bye. Done.
Half the time learning what you don't want to do is equally as informative, if not like, I don't know, for me, that's always been easier to find.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's like, I don't know, process of elimination for my brain, apparently, instead of addition. I don't know. Somebody can psychoanalyze that at another point.
Oh, man. Okay, you just keep reminding me of more things. I feel like before
Mhm.
I decided to go to school for ceramics, I was so paralyzed because I was like, I love
Mhm.
pottery. I love the mountains and climbing. I love architecture and science and all building, whatever. And I was paralyzed trying to choose one. And then I did realize, and it's become very clear since then, that like not choosing is choosing none of them in a way because you don't get to go deep. And it's okay to pick one thing. You can always come back out and do another thing later. It's not going away.
It's also really funny to me to hear you think of like having to pick one over the other when I'm like, oh, geology, Potter, of course. Like, I'm like, that's
Yeah.
not picking. That's
Yeah,
literally
totally.
like the most, I don't know.
No, it's perfect. I accidentally have a degree in the science of ceramics.
Right. I was like, gee, you were telling me your passions were geology and chemistry. I can't imagine how that's
Mhm.
applied to your current work.
Okay, funnily enough, yes, it is. It affects how I like think about and visualize what's happening in the kiln. But the honest truth is like, I do not like developing glazes. I think I could do a good job at it if I wanted to spend the time doing that, but I would way rather that someone else do that. So
Okay,
there.
yeah, you were really not meant to be in the sciences. That's hilarious. Okay, you found your style, you found the kind of that voice and what you were interested in school, but then was it in the craft school or somebody was like, okay, you can make and sell your pots? Or like, what was the kind of, that's still a really big jump
Right,
to
right.
figure out,
Okay.
like, now I'm going to do this thing.
Totally. So I feel like I was having, in that last semester of school, I don't know, I think I did like a holiday sale, like a holiday pop up that year. And by that last semester, I was like really, I had like an aesthetic kind of bubble that I was existing in, or, or my work had become a little more cohesive and it was starting to sell a lot better. And okay, there's a couple elements here. I was using Instagram mostly because I was like, ooh, fun photo filters. And
Meanwhile, my heart is breaking because my clients are putting filters over the photos I've just spent
yeah,
hours editing.
I don't know. It was the early days when things were just chronological of the people you followed.
Mostly of food. Oh, what was the name of that filter? It put like rounded edges around. Like there was the white and black.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like the old style, whatever. Yeah, I definitely used that here and there. It really worked. In those early days, my Instagram started growing and I was doing, I was meeting people in Portland and selling my work to people through events at the school, but also like, one or two other events that year and starting to just like build a little bit of a following and to get projects like a wholesale inquiry here and there. And I was like, okay, could I maybe like actually start doing this full time? The other thing I should mention, which is an important thing, when I was in school, this was like only a semester in, I think, I was really, really stressed out about paying tuition. I needed like another $7,000 or so. And a friend of mine came up with the idea of, why don't you have a mug club? And I was like, that's dumb. Why would someone join that? But and then I thought about it some more and I was like, well, maybe. And so I did flesh that out and I made my website and I sold mug club memberships and I advertised it to everybody I knew, like family, friends. And I grew up in Portland, which was also really helpful. Like I grew up in Portland in a family that was in the arts. Very helpful because all my mom's friends were artists. Like our community was very supportive of the arts. Maybe you saw this in one of the old blog posts on my website, but like when I was a kid, I thought all women were artists. Like that's how many artists were
I
in
love that for
community.
you.
And there was a moment where I was like, they're not all artists. Oh, men can be artists? I just,
Okay. Slight aside, but just something equally exciting to me. One of my childhood friends is a doctor. She's a peds oncologist researcher at St. Jude's, and her son came home from school one day. I'm probably messing up this story. Sorry, Becky, if you listen to this. Somebody will correct me. But the point of it is like, I think there was career day or there was something, and somebody's dad came who maybe was also a doctor, and like her son comes home and was like, hey mom, boys can be doctors too. And
oh, no way.
we were just like, yes,
yeah, love that moment.
this is the direction we want to go. I love this so
I
much
literally
for us.
remember that day and I was like, Mom, your friend Jay is an artist too. Boys can be artists. And she just was like, oh honey.
Is this when I begin to tell you about the history of the word? No.
So anyway, that was a gift too. I think I could have pulled it off in other ways, but it helped with that initial thing. I was like, okay, you guys, I'm starting a mug club. Here's the deal. I am trying to pay the rest of my way through craft school, and I'm making a lot of, I've decided I like production. I realized being there, I was like, no, production is my jam. I love making multiples. I want to crank some stuff out, and I don't want to keep it. I want it to go away and be used. I'm making a lot of work. I'm making a lot of mugs. I'm trying to figure out my style and figure out what works for working in multiples. And, this mug club is not only a way for me to raise money for tuition, it's a way for me to practice making 50 of one thing at once. And for you, it's a delightful thing that you get to join. And then every season you will get shipped or given a new mug that's a surprise.
And you're never going to make that again. Like that's the
you'll get this great thing. You'll be supporting a young artist. And I got 50 members. It was awesome. And we still have the mug club.
I was just going to ask. I couldn't remember if you guys actually still do that or not.
Yeah, we do. We don't push it. We don't really widely advertise it because it has 150 people in it or something. And that feels like enough. But it's on there. Scroll to the very bottom of the shop all page.
I love how you also even just started to whisper a little. Like we don't actually, I don't want that many more people to do this.
We got to 300 in the pandemic, and it was kind of sneaky. They kept joining, and we were like, oh no, we need, what?
Right? Actually, okay, I have to ask. I still want to keep going on the trajectory, but this is a perfect example of something that you started early and are still doing, but I imagine can't possibly work in the same way that it did, or maybe it is. And what's special is that you are delivering personally, it's your hands making every mug, or not that part, but I know you guys have what I find super interesting, and we'll talk about a little bit more later, is you guys are still making most of your stuff by hand. You have some molds, you have a little bit of jigger and jolly, but it's not it doesn't seem like it's the overwhelming amount that you're doing. You're trying really hard to keep the hands in clay.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we'll get into the jigger jolly, which I would argue is very much still handmade.
Right, but it's a different thing,
And you can find some major Facebook post fights of other people fighting about how it's cheating.
Right. Just different. Only is it different, but there is a certain I don't know, the consistency factor that's where you use it for, different than trying to bring somebody up to speed on something you personally have the muscle memory for.
It's actually not the main reason we decided to move into the jigger jolly world, but we'll get there.
Well, first let's talk about Mug Club, and then we'll go down that route.
Yeah.
Because I'm super interested. It's just it's really hard to make a living from clay. If you are doing, my perspective personally, if you are trying to do utilitarian production where, because what you're being compared to is, Target
Everything
or whatever.
Else.
Yeah. As opposed to, not saying it's not hard to make a living in clay as a non-functional artist, but there's a, socially speaking, non-functional work gets compared to paintings. And so everybody already has this value of it. That's capital A art, right? We're back to art and craft. Oh, shit.
Not as easy to sell necessarily, potentially,
right.
but not
right.
Always.
Bigger payday when it does sell, but you're going to have bigger gaps in between of when it sells. It's pros and cons to everything. But Mug Club first.
Okay.
So it started as funding for school. I think for any of us too, finding a way to get that initial momentum, to get yourself going, cannot be understated. Finding a place, who cares if you already had this network and you knew these people from childhood and they were supporting you personally. It just gets you the momentum. That's the whole point.
I think you really have to believe that what you're offering is awesome. Frankly,
yes.
I was getting really excited. I was truly, I was having panic attacks, not infrequently at this time, I was having chest pain from anxiety. It was a problem. But it was kind of because I was so freaking excited about everything I wanted to make. I was I had to do this project and that project. I had to do this. I was up in the night, oh my God, I have to draw. I was so blowing up that my body couldn't handle it. But so in other words, I was really excited about what I was making and so excited to make more. And I think when you can share that with people, they feel it and they want to be part of it, or they want to buy something, whatever it is.
Everybody's so worried about how quote unquote gross sales feels. And it's like, but if you are genuinely exciting about what you're selling, that you can't be gross about it because you're genuinely like, oh my God, look at this thing. Look at how doesn't it feel? And somebody else goes, oh, this feels so nice. And you're like, yeah, doesn't it? Isn't that amazing?
Totally. And also it's marketing has been very cringy to me. And just 2 years ago, we got to a place where we had to start doing ads. Otherwise, I was going to have to lay people off. And I was like, oh my God, this is disgusting. What am I going to do? And I had to reframe it for myself. And I've really come around to the point where I'm like, you know what? Ads are a way to find people who want to find us. And I will never want to or intentionally pressure someone to buy something. God, that would just feel horrible. And it's like, no, hey, we're here. This is what we do. If you like it, you can come to our website. Yeah, whether it's an ad or just an early saying, hey, community, I'm doing this thing. You can take part if you want. It's just an offer.
Yeah, you're not getting rid of people's ability to critically think for themselves and make a decision. That's the slimy side of the marketing world, which I can talk about on another day.
Yeah.
But anyways, Mug Club.
Yeah. Okay, so we did the Mug Club. I graduated school with my big, fancy post-baccalaureate certificate. And I spent that summer leading trips for a couple schools, which was great, and kind of gearing up for my next move, looking for a studio space, etc. And I was feeling pretty overwhelmed about the cost of that. I found one that was $500, which felt about $300 too much. I was really discouraged. And then kind of had this moment chatting with my parents who were kind of like, well, we have that room in the basement. They had a big old house in Portland. There was a part of the basement that had a door to the outside that was storage that wasn't actually very well used. They didn't really need it. And they were like, you can use this for a while. And so that's what I did. It was 400 square feet. And it became the studio, which was so incredible. I have never taken a loan for this business, but I got 5 years of free rent in that space, which is, huge.
We call it a loan from the Bank of Icus, which is my last name, my parents' last name.
Nice.
I have literally taken loans from them and then paid back, but, they're zero interest loans. These are the things that make huge differences. Because when I think about it, okay, there's a certain amount of privilege and benefit from all of that. But also if you look at other companies starting up, they're either the traditional, you're taking a loan, you're going into debt on the promise that you will then be making money to pay this off. Agreed, 100%. I would rather work 5 jobs at the same time, or which has happened. Or when I look at tech startups now, right? Tech bro world, there are people who have these connections who say, hey, I have this brilliant idea. Give me money to get it off the ground. I've come to realize, I think, and this is just my brain, but I presume I have to believe other people feel this way. Otherwise, I'm just unhinged. But that expectation that you're going to be able to, there must be a way for you to figure it out all by yourself. That you're going to be able to do it, that you should be able to work hard enough to earn enough to make the numbers work, yada, yada, yada. That isn't real when you actually look at the facts of how people have started businesses.
Totally.
Amazon didn't even make money for the first, 3 some years. I don't remember the exact dates,
but I believe that.
But he had the connections with people to say, fund this in the beginning. I promise that it will turn around and make money. And what that allowed them to do was get us all addicted to the system that we all know of Amazon.
So much confidence to be fund this. You'll get your money back and more. Versus,
right?
I'm sure some people say, fund this. It'll probably work. If you're excited about that, then fund it. Why not?
Right? Or also hey, community, thank you for supporting me as a human. I promise to be as good of a steward as I possibly can be. I'm super excited about this thing I'm making. Do you also want it? So it's just one of those reframes that recently for myself, thinking about there always has to be some level of runway, some level of funding coming from somewhere, whether that be a separate job, whether that be parents with an empty room in the basement, whether it be investment, venture capitalists coming down with $1 million magical dollars so that your app doesn't make any money for the first year. I don't understand that, but
I did get a little grant in the beginning too. was from Mercy Corps. I don't know if they still have this program, but Mercy Corps had a headquarters in Portland, and they had like this small business development program that I guess I actually started it while I was in school at OCAC. Here was the program. You either need to be a barely existing tiny business or have an idea. And if you enroll in the program, if you get in and enroll, which it wasn't very hard to get in at the time, then you spend 1 year saving, I think it was like $187 a month. It added to $2,000 over 1 year.
Okay.
You couldn't save it all at once. You had to deposit that much money each month into a shared account with Mercy Corps just to prove to them that you were like consistent at saving. And you had to take a business class. It was like 2 months every Wednesday night or something with this really awesome teacher. He was a hoot, and it was very enjoyable. Just some basic business stuff. I did that, and in the end, they said, if you save the $2,000, you do the whole year, you do the class, we will match it threefold with $6,000. And that was huge because I didn't have $6,000. So I did that, and right around the time I was graduating, they gave me the money like 2 months early because I was like, I need it now. And they were like, you've been doing the stuff, you can have it now. It was so nice. And so I bought a Scott 1227 3PK and a wheel and a $500 really old little Scott kiln as a bisque. That was my seed money. So it was $8,000, including the money that I saved.
That's an amazing program. I love that.
It was so great. It's small, but it's like just getting that initial equipment is like, I hear some people like, I want to get into pottery. I'm going to buy a wheel. And I'm like, oh my God. But then you also need like kiln, glazes, like equipment. Why don't you go join a community studio for a while?
Our first kiln, and this got us through the first 120 mugs that Francesco made in like 3 weeks for a holiday order or whatever. It was probably at least the first 2 years, maybe slightly longer, that we had an old kiln setter kiln that was from like a family friend's basement. His mom had gotten super into like painting bisqueware in the 70s. I guess that was a thing. So much so that people bought kilns for themselves.
Love
like
it.
they were buying bisqueware and painting it and firing it. It had been sitting in his basement for a couple of decades, and we took it out and attached an electric panel onto it, and that was that. And our one and only wheel still to this day was our wedding gift from my parents. That was the only new thing that we had. I think in some ways, starting with like the random old kiln or wheel you get off Facebook Marketplace or for $20 or whatever, then you have to learn how to troubleshoot. And I think that probably sets you up for more success down the road.
Wait, one tiny thing on kiln setters is actually, though, when I was at OCAC, I would fire my work in the old kiln setter kiln because I was like, this one will actually go to the same temperature every time. I know.
Okay, fair.
The other ones don't.
Because I was like, because I'm laughing because thinking like it's more reliable because of the age and all this type of stuff. Like it didn't always take the same amount of time.
Right. No, there's a lot of factors, but
so when we did get when we do now have a new Scott kiln, it's so amazing because it's like to the minute. We know exactly how long everything. Because I was like, I don't know.
There were so many different kilns there that I was like, this one overfires, this one underfires, this one does this other weird thing, but this one, it goes to when it bends.
Right. And then it clicks off. Yeah. I love it. So you knew you loved production, which I think is like a very particular group of us, which I just love. But when did it become a point of having somebody come in to help? And how did that because you were there for 5 years.
Well, it was actually pretty quickly. It was September 2016 when I set up the studio in the basement. It was kind of perfect timing because it was the holiday season was coming and most potters make their money. And it's like, okay, I worked all summer. I'm going to do this for the fall. And again, I still had like really cheap rent and not a lot of expenses, which was great. But I had a few wholesale inquiries at the time, which any potter could tell you is like not a great way to make money, but it is a great way to get your stuff out there. And so I pretty quickly initially like hired a friend from OCAC, from the school I had been at, to help. I don't know, we had to make like 100 mugs for this store in town. By hired, I don't mean like hired as an employee. It was like, can you come help make like 50 of these? I feel like that was the first move. I had another friend from OCAC who was still a student there, who was an amazing potter. And he started coming to work, I don't know, 1 day a week through the fall, because there were like projects coming my way. It was really magical and exciting. Some of them were more exciting than others. But I think that year I made like 100 weed pipes, and I don't even smoke anything. But some company was like, we want you to make clay pipes. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get so good at throwing tall, skinny, long, and made them on the wheel, like really random projects. But I did a big holiday sale that year in my parents' house, which, like I said, it was this big old house it was like in Northwest Portland. It was like a 1905 Victorian that the main floor it was kind of like a circle of rooms that you could easily circulate through. It was a big old house. They allowed me to open it to the public and set up the whole main floor as a ceramic sale. That first sale it was so funny. I had like one person helping me, and immediately I was like, oh no, so many people came, which was amazing. But I had a few friends who were there that day that were like, we're going to stay and help. I was like, oh, thank God.
You need more. You underestimated this. Yeah.
That was so exciting because I made a good bit of money that holiday season. I was like, okay, we can keep going. We got this. And I hired another woman who started working like 2 days a week or 3 days a week. It was all touch and go. Like, okay, this person's here helping. It's going well. Like, we have these projects coming in. I actually need more help. Like, could they work another day? Do I know another potter who might want to join in for this or that? And bit by bit, it took probably 4 years before they became W-9 employees. But yeah, it was all very gradual. And again, like I said, I was like very loose and casual, which is my general style. Kind of the feeling of like, oh, thank you so much for coming to help with this project. Like, what am I trying to say? It's taken me a long time to reframe what it means to have someone working for you and to be like, this person wants a job and they want responsibility. And most people really like being given responsibility, which means that I actually have to release that rather than being like, oh, thank you so much for this favor of coming to work today, to be like, okay, you are in charge of getting this done. Here are the expectations and boundaries that comes with. And here's what I expect of you. That was impossible for me to say. But now I know, like, actually, people love being given responsibility. It motivates them. It excites them. It makes them feel purpose. And it yields great results.
They also then have clarity of like, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to do this.
Yeah.
And then I did this. That was for sure my learning curve, too. It was like, oh, I want to create this like team culture where we're all equal. Just because I like own the admin keys or pay the rent to this place, we're going to all work together equally or whatever. And then I finally had a studio manager. There was one day where he came in the morning and I had like a client meeting late at night and I just like left everything a mess. Like when we had clients come in, we would have a glass of wine or some snacks or whatever. And I just like left everything out. And I came in and I'm picking up and he takes this like soap covered glass out of my hands and was like, this is literally what you pay me for. Go do something else.
Oh my God, what a gift to have someone on your team be like, can you stop? I got this.
The level of guilt I felt for having somebody clean for me, like clean the dishes. I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't do those last night. And he was like, I'm glad I have a job.
Let me do my job.
Right. Exactly. And it was that realizing having the clear expectations and the boundaries was actually giving us more space to be free and flexible because it was like, this is clearly what you need from me and what I need from you and like how we're going to work together. And then we can be really flexible with how that actually plays out.
Maybe you're going to ask this, but in your email to me before this interview, you said that you might ask something like, what would you wish you had told yourself way back when? And the main thing that came to mind when I thought about that question was like something along the lines of like, don't be afraid to set clear boundaries and expectations. And especially like when hiring someone, that's very normal. It really actually enables people to step up and take on responsibility and feel awesome about what they're doing. It's really scary and vulnerable to like put some part of your business in someone else's hands and be like, well, if they fail, I will suffer the financial consequences. And that means that it will be hard for me to pay these people. But usually it works out.
Yes. Or like, now I have become so reliable on this one person, or not reliable, reliant on this one person because they're doing such an amazing job and they fit so well. You've helped them learn new skills, which then allows them to apply for a full, like my studio manager was a part-time person. I couldn't afford to have a full-time help at the time. He told me he got offered a full-time gig and theater was his passion and with like front of house for a theater. And he was like, I was able to speak to these skills. Like, I learned these skills from you, which allowed me to get this job,
Yeah.
which was so exciting for me, but also like, oh shit, now I have to find a new person. You have to go back
Right.
to square one, which is just like,
Ugh.
oh, that's so painful.
Yeah, that will never stop being true. People will come and go, and you will have to start again.
Oh, that's the hardest part. I think for me, that's the hardest part of having
For sure.
a team because you invest so much in the best of possible options.
Yeah.
Where you are now, is that where you moved when you moved out of the basement, or has there been iterations in between?
We've had 2 locations. So we were in the basement. And, there's so many little steps along the way. But God, yeah, I feel like we started selling online. I had Squarespace. We started selling online maybe I just can't remember exactly when, but it was sometime in that first year. But it was really low key. It was just a little bit. And of course, shipping, I was like, oh God, shipping, what a headache. That built up gradually, but it was really still mostly in-person sales and projects and things, and online was growing and growing. Shipping was becoming more and more of a headache. And then it wasn't till, I guess, 2020. We were doing quite a bit of online sales before the pandemic, but the pandemic, there was an initial slump for a minute, and there were 5 of us at the time, and we just put our masks on and kept working for the most part. Then it just blew up, which I know a lot of potters experienced that, and makers of many kinds, that people were at home being like, support local. I need handmade things. My house needs better stuff in it. Whatever it
Right.
was.
I'm staring at the same empty spot on my wall.
I can't go to a restaurant. I will become a gourmet chef and get some nice plates.
Or I will at least buy the takeout from the restaurant and then put them on
Yes,
nice
yes,
plates.
exactly. Whatever it is, give me an experience. Oh man, it was so I just feel very grateful that is how the pandemic hit us, among other things. But even up till the pandemic, I would say, for the most part, I and my team, we were just making as much as we could, and we were selling it. We would sell out of everything at the holidays. How cool is that? I did a business mentorship program before the pandemic where people were talking about setting sales goals and targets and things. And I was like, huh. We just keep making it until we can't make anymore. Which I feel differently about that now. Now we have more goals.
Well, this is the interesting thing, though, because when you are doing everything by hand, the supply part of supply and demand, there is a limit. Sometimes I do wonder, how that sales process has to change when you're like, okay, we're selling out all of the time. Let me find a way where we can produce more. But
Yeah.
sometimes that can then come back to bite you
Yeah,
in the
no.
butt because it was oh, wait, now the supply is higher. And so the demand has, it's this little.
Or now our elbows hurt.
You said before you guys are making as much as you can before the pandemic and selling out. What was that then pushing more towards online?
Yeah, it was.
Before
I would
that?
say we were selling out at our studio sales, and we would have these second sales. That it was a fun moment because they would so many people would come wanting discounted ceramics. We weren't selling out online so much, and then the pandemic happened, and we weren't doing anything in person for the most part. And maybe a month or so into lockdown, people started shopping online like wild. I had kind of started, I'd started building a mailing list by that point, but I hadn't been very strategic or thoughtful about it, or even considered the fact that a mailing list is really important.
I'm gonna.
Not seriously considered. This would be another thing to tell my earlier self is
Mhm.
your mailing list is the most valuable thing that you have.
For anyone listening, gee, have you heard me say that before?
We started doing this monthly restock cycle, or every 4 to 6 weeks, we would restock the web shop. We would be like, here's what we have that is new or that we made this
Mhm.
month. And then I would send out an email and say, web shop restock, Instagram post, web shop restock. It would be gone in most of it in a couple hours, all of it within 24 to 36 hours would just be sold. So it would be stocked and then it would be sold out. It was wild. I was like, oh my God, okay. Lot of shipping. So shipping became even more of a headache. And I had a dear old friend, Joey Rose, who lived just down the road. We grew up together. We've known each other since we were 5. And we were attached at the hip through elementary and middle school. And our lives had kind of weaved in and out of each other's orbits here and there. But she was back in Portland. She had actually gone to OCAC after me to study fibers and metals. And she was working in a production sewing studio making bags. She did a lot of leather work and incredible, beautiful art with things such as bones and fur and such. But her job kind of shut down with the pandemic. And I was like, oh my God, Joey, can you help us with shipping? And she was like, yeah, definitely. I need work.
That's awesome.
So that was very lucky. And at first it was just a few days a week. She was doing so much shipping. Poor girl. She was in great spirits about it. But
Just picturing like the cardboard paper cuts.
oh
Ugh.
man, she was good. I just am so grateful for her for so many reasons. She works really hard. And how do I put this? Like, she's worked for other businesses over the years. She grew up, her family had Mexican restaurants, and she started managing one of them at 15 because she didn't go to high school. Instead, she moved out at 15 and started managing one of the family restaurants. And she is a hard worker and she's good at managing a business. She's very motivated for things to work out. She takes ownership over the place she's working if she likes it, I saw that and felt that really quickly and was so grateful. Now we all share shipping. Everybody jumps in here and there. In not too much time, Joey Rose, who wasn't a potter, was like jumping in on like helping glazing and attaching handles and this and that. And she was like, I got this. Show me how to do it. And God, she was just amazing. It didn't take very long for her to be basically running the show.
I love that.
So through this time, like money is coming in. And what I'll add here is that I had wanted for years to move to the Gorge, which is an hour from Portland. We now live in Hood River, which is in the Columbia River Gorge. It's kind of like in line with the strip of Cascade Mountains to the east of Portland and Seattle. Like there's a strip of mountains.
Awesome.
There are many rivers that come together here. It's a very beautiful place. The team knew that. I was like, you guys, sometime in the next couple of years, I want to move to Hood River. I eventually want to move the studio there. If anybody wants to move there with us, you're invited. And they knew that was happening. And I had just I had just started dating Jared in the end of 2019, who is now my husband. And we had known each other for years, but for like 7 years, but we hadn't dated and timing worked out. And honestly, it all happened pretty quickly. We were like, oh yeah, you. Okay, great. Let's move to the Gorge together.
You've been around.
We were both independently looking at property casually in the Gorge. And within 5 months of dating, we applied for a mortgage together. It was a full year into the pandemic. We had been making offers on places in Hood River. Side note to all of this, not totally business related, but like together with our combined savings, we were like, wow, we could actually buy a house. But probably the 2 years before that, I hadn't been paying myself much, but the business definitely, like the holiday season bump enabled me to save some chunks of cash, which I really wanted to put towards this move for the business and myself. And Jared had been the property manager on a farm in Southern Oregon for 7 or 8 years where it was like 45 minutes from a town. He didn't spend any money. He just like saved and saved and saved. And so, we were like, wow, we could do something finally. This is crazy. For years, I felt like it's impossible to ever be able to like buy a house.
Well, and especially like 2020, 2021, like we moved to Milwaukee in 2021 and it was insane. I had owned a condo in Chicago. We were buying a house that was worth less than the property I was selling. And still, it was insane. What people were doing with housing, I was like, have you lost your mind? Like what? People throwing an extra $50,000 on top of a $200,000 house offer. I'm like, that is a quarter of the like.
Yeah.
It's not like if a person throws $50,000 on top of $1 million house offer, percentage wise, like, I don't know, your monthly payment. I have no idea what a mortgage of that size would be, but like it's probably an extra $20 a month or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, this is different. Or that was
For 200, I was like, and then they were saying, well, if it doesn't appraise at that, we'll still pay it. I'm like, so you just like, what?
Yeah. Crazy times.
Bananas. I mean, I don't know. I know Portland is crazy now.
Hood River was, I would say, pretty equal to Portland at the time.
Okay.
Since Hood River has become more expensive than Portland. We got in at the right moment. This is a whole other conversation, the fact that I own a business in a town that's very expensive to live in, where housing is hard to find. But it's a beautiful place. the whole studio team was so sweet. They were like, yeah, do it. Like, keep trying. They were like in support of the Hood River dream. A few folks were like, I'll probably move on around that time. Some people were interested in moving. It felt really like good. We didn't find a house before I found a studio. And I had been looking for commercial real estate leases. Terrifying. Never had leased a space. And they were also very hard to find. But this place opened up in downtown Hood River, down in like the industrial zone by the train tracks. And it felt way too expensive. And yet I was like, nothing has been coming up for like 6 months. This feels like something I should hop on. And Jared doesn't work for Wolf Ceramics, but he's been immensely supportive the whole way through. And he's a builder, side note. He's a very handy guy.
The pro tip here is like every potter or craftsperson on the planet should really partner in life with someone who's handy.
Yeah. A little electric, does a little plumbing, does a little welding. So yeah, he was like, I don't know, I think you should go for it. Thank you, Jared. I was like, all right, I guess I'm signing this lease for like $4,000 a month. Maybe it was 35 at the start. No, wait, no, it was less. Okay, no, I think it was like 25. Now it's almost 5,000. But no, I think it was 25 because we didn't have the whole space at first. I think could be maybe $1,000 a month at this point, and then it was like more than double that. It kind of tricked me too because they were like rent is actually $1,500, but then you're like additional fees, triple net is another 1,000. But that wasn't clear till like later in the signing process, and I was like, oh no! But like I got so excited about it, so that was crazy. And I signed the lease. And then a month later, this one house came on the market. We kept bidding on things and getting outbid in seconds because there was no inventory out here. We found this house in Hood River that was on a half acre that was, a lot of people considered a teardown, honestly. It was like 70 years old and had been empty for almost 20 years. Yet, the foundation was great. It was freaking awesome. The house, like, it was a funky old house, but it was, and it is, I'm sitting in it now, all cedar. There was not a speck of sheetrock. No insulation in the walls. The ceiling was only 1 inch of fiberglass and 2x6s. Like it was a cabin.
Yes.
But we loved it and we hopped on it fast. And in the spirit of financial transparency here, we found out this was all in one day. We were like, oh my God, there is something for us here. We want this. Let's do it. And then they were like, oh, they won't take a bank loan because it's not livable. And we were like, oh no.
Like they only wanted somebody to pay in cash?
Yes. And they were like, a bank will not lend on this because you can't technically, it's not like the kitchen doesn't work. It's not up to living standards for it to be your primary residence for a loan like that. So literally over like 6 hours, we had already told our parents, we think we're going to make an offer on this one. And then we were like, oh shit, we can't. It was such a privilege is what it was. Each of our families offered to loan us $150,000 for 12 months in cash. And my parents they were in the process of refinancing their home in order to build a studio, but they weren't going to start the project for a year. So they were like, we need this money in 1 year.
Like,
I was like, okay, I will use it this year and then I will give it back to you next year. And oh my God, again, what a gift. We made a cash offer, and I will say it was, we were like, by this
wild.
We were like, we've learned that if you don't go big, you just don't even get a chance at buying the house, but we can back out. If the offer gets accepted, there are ways to back out. So at this point, Jared is much more cautious than me. I'm like kind of fly by the seat of your pants. I was like, escalation clause, higher, higher, higher.
This is also what happens to your brain when you've been looking for so long.
Oh my God.
That you wind up, not as extreme. We could take out a traditional mortgage and loan, but like definitely looked at the property that everybody else, literally we saw a couple people take 2 steps inside the door, look around and be like, oh no, and walk out. And we're like, okay, that's the house for us.
Yes. Yay. So anyway, we got it. And we wrote a letter saying we loved it and we wanted to fix it up. There are 2 women who had inherited the house that were part of the family that had lived there. And long ago, the offer's fault that were almost as much as ours were going to tear it down and build 2 houses and 2 ADUs probably because it was half acre. So this isn't a podcast about how to buy a house.
But selfishly, what people should probably have gathered at 4 years into the podcast at this point is like, I'm just learning all the things that I've always wanted. Like you've normalized my life. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right, cool.
Cool,
Like, this is why we're having these conversations of like, you can figure this out, and we're not the only ones who made insane housing decisions.
Yeah. And really lucky too, because we did get our mortgage like 10 months later after we redid the kitchen. Okay, rewind to the business. We have Joey Rose, Joanna, Sam, Carson, Kyle. Oh my God, who am I missing? Peter. Anyway, there were about 5 of us. And one guy was very part-time because he was in school. Anyway, Joey Rose and Joanna, who were at the studio at the time, had this conversation with me at one point when this was all starting to happen, where they were like, okay, Sarah, can you like get out of our way now? Like, we've got this. And I was like, oh, okay. They were like, we know how to restock the web shop. Like, obviously there's like new designs coming on and stuff. Like, it's not like we don't need you, but like, we're good for now.
Like, you have a few things going on.
And so I was like, okay. And again, it was this moment where things are just selling easily. What the heck? How incredible. So I moved away from Portland, an hour away, and I took 4 months off. All the while, actually, no, the lease on the new studio didn't start for a few months. But here's what I did is I told myself, I was like, Sarah, it's okay if you don't go into production in that amazing new studio space for 9 months. Not that I didn't do anything in there. I took 4 months off to work on renovating our house. Jared took a year. I mean, he did other work on the side too, but like we put a lot of time in here, and it was a wonderful summer of like basically camping in our backyard and using an outdoor kitchen and working on the house and checking in on the studio, but letting those guys, like, they were like, we're good. Can you just trust us, please?
What an important like step for them too, to be able to like know that they could, like that's so beautiful.
Again, like I'm just, whenever an employee is like, tells me to get out of their way because they've got this, I'm like, oh, I love you. Thank you. Yes. Go forth. Do the thing.
Preach the gospel.
And I was setting up the studio here. And I basically was like, okay, until operations move out here, which was 9 months later, it was the beginning of 2022. I'm just going to use this space. I'm going to like be involved at the Portland studio. I was going out there 1 day a week and doing all the computer things, but I'm going to set up a small studio, slightly set up here. And I'm just going to start making whatever the hell I want for 6 months. I'm going to just make work and be creative. That was an expensive project, I would say. But, we were taking a lot of leaps at that moment. So by the end of 2021, 2 or 3 folks who had been in Portland, 2 of them were like, great, I'm ready to do my next thing. Like, I'll make it through the holiday season and move on. And then Joey Rose and Sam were like, I want to move to Hood River and help get this going out there. And then Peter, fortunately, we could keep the Portland studio because it was in my parents' basement. Peter was a grad student, and he was coming in 1 or 2 days a week to the studio to throw cups. And he was like, he got that cup style down. So he was like, I just need some work that's not school. I will come make cups every week and bisque them, and then they will go to Hood River to be glazed. That was really cool. And Joey Rose and Sam and I got going. Sam was commuting for a while. Joey Rose was living in my house for a month and a half. In the end, Sam realized he actually wanted to be in Portland, and Joey Rose still lives here, and it's the best. And I think if you were to ask her, she would probably say she loves Hood River and was so ready to leave Portland and do something new and find her own place in this town. So yeah, we hired 2 people that spring and another person at some point after that. And for a while, we were a team of all women for the first time, which was really cool. And being in this new space like really prompted a lot of like, okay, we're going to be a little more structured about this time, this time. We're going to have like some clearer, like just like guidelines of how we operate. And over the last several years here, there's just been more and more of that. And I got a grant a few years ago to do several things, but one of them was to pay for a business coach who really pushed us to dial in operating procedures and how we give people raises and like all these structural things that I'm like, oh God, doesn't that make people feel like a machine? But then the team is like, no, we want guidelines.
Well, I want to know when I'm getting paid more. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, these are not like my natural things to do. And God, they're important and helpful. And they actually set you free.
I'm a systems girly through and through. I'm like, the more well-built systems, the more I can function at my best. You don't have to spend any mental energy on like, wait, what's going on? What do I need to do today? What? It's like I can just open it up and it's there. We can move on. But oh my God, there's so much to talk. Clearly, we have a lot still to dig into. So I hope this first part of my conversation with Sarah has given you a glimpse into what's actually possible when it comes to growing a creative business, and maybe challenge some assumptions about what that growth has to look like. What strikes me most about Sarah's story is a reminder of how gradual it all is. 5 years in her parents' basement, hiring one person for a few days a week, and then another, years of touch and go before anyone actually became a full-time W-2 official employee. This was not an overnight success story or some perfectly executed plan. It was showing up consistently, being honest about what she could do and couldn't do, and making one decision at a time that eventually added up to something sustainable. Frankly, it's the reality of most businesses, and the reality that we so frequently never see online as we watch the makers that we admire from the other side of the screen. In part 2, we're going to dig into how Sarah's business actually operates now, the weekly rhythms, how the team divides up work, why they invested in a Jigger and Jolly, and how they balance custom restaurant orders with online sales. We'll also get into the scary financial dip of 2023 that made Sarah think she might have to lay people off, and what she did to turn things around. Plus, her evolving relationship with marketing, ads, and yes, of course, Instagram, which, spoiler alert, she doesn't particularly love, but her business is still thriving. So if you're not already subscribed to the Maker's Playbook on whatever podcast app you're using to listen right now, be sure you hit that follow button or the plus sign or whatever they've changed it to today. That way, part 2 will show up in your feed as soon as it's ready, and you won't miss the second half of this conversation. Until next time, my friends, go get back to making your dreams a reality, because together, we've got this. Audio post-production of this podcast is made possible by help from Christy Kotzfan, with promotional material assistance from Queenie Maliki. The Maker's Playbook podcast is recorded on the original homelands of the Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee people, where the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present.
This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.